Hello and welcome to this webcast on going back to complete your CCP from the previous year. This webcast is designed for members who answered no or left incomplete one or more of the 3 questions on the Declaration of Participation in the Continuing Competence Program, Section 4 of the Annual Renewal of Registration Form. You have likely also received correspondence from the college indicating that you are required to comply with the program. The goal of this short webcast is to get you caught up on your CCP and ensure that you're in good shape to start next year's CCP. At the end of this webcast, you should be able to complete your CCP documents from the previous year, put together a portfolio of evidence of your learning activities, and complete, sign, and send in your declaration form. Please note that this webcast is only intended for members who are behind on their CCP. If you are looking for general information about how to complete the CCP, please refer to one of the step-by-step CCP webcasts on the CCP pages of the college website at www.ocswssw.org. Here's an overview of what I'll be covering over the next few minutes. First, I'm going to give a quick overview of the CCP and briefly outline the 5 steps involved in completing it. I'll then spend some time discussing how to go back to complete your CCP for the previous year. This involves helping you to identify learning activities that you engaged in last year, complete the professional development plan, fill out your self-assessment tool, and complete, sign, and submit your declaration form. Note that when you're catching up on your CCP, you'll be working in the reverse of how the program was designed. At the end of today's webcast, I'll also spend some time sharing tips and resources to help you stay on track with your CCP once you've caught up. One of your obligations as a registered social worker or social service worker is to fulfill continuing competency requirements set out by the college. This is so that members of the public can be assured that as a member of the college you are ethical and qualified and continue to learn and develop as a professional. Self-reflection is one of the hallmarks of social work and social service work practice, and the CCP builds on this. The program is designed so that your self-assessment helps you to identify areas for new learning, growth, and development. Many members already engage in continuing education and learning, but the CCP makes learning more meaningful and effective because it focuses and documents that learning. There are 5 steps involved in completing the CCP. Although you will not be following the steps in this order when you go back to complete your CCP from the previous year, it is helpful to have an overview of the structure of the program before beginning to catch up. You will need to have 3 documents in order to begin work on your CCP: the CCP Instruction Guide, the Self-Assessment Tool and Professional Development Plan documents from the year in question. This is 1 booklet, and the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice Handbook. Please note that the CCP documents are now electronic. You can download them from the website and save them to your own computer or print them off to complete in hard copy. All members receive a Member Resource USB, which contains the CCP documents, as well as the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice Handbook and other important college materials. The first step of the CCP is to complete the worksheet, which involves assessment of your current responsibilities and learning needs, and your future learning needs and goals. Although this worksheet is optional, it can be very useful in completing the rest of the CCP. The next 2 steps of the CCP are to complete your self-assessment tool and your professional development plan. We recommend that you complete these steps early in the calendar year, and they must be done every year. Once you've completed your self-assessment and identified your goals and your learning plan in your professional development plan, you can start the 4th step, which is to carry out your learning activities. Throughout the year, you should periodically review and document your progress in your professional development plan, making note of any changes or any unanticipated learning. You're required to keep a folder of evidence of having completed the goals you set out. The 5th and final step of the CCP is to make an annual declaration of participation in the CCP in the year prior. You will be required to do this at the end of every year as part of the annual renewal of registration. Section 4 of the renewal form is the declaration of participation in the CCP. Because you are completing last year's CCP a year later, you will have to approach your CCP for last year differently. The next few slides will focus on how to go back to complete your CCP in hindsight. Going back to complete the CCP for the previous year is not the way the program is designed, but it is possible. After you've caught up, you'll be able to complete the CCP each year as it was designed. Let's move on to discuss how you can go back to complete your CCP from last year. Once you've completed your CCP documents, be sure to send in the declaration, which came with the follow-up correspondence you received from the college, or which can be requested from the college. There are 5 steps to going back to complete your CCP from the previous year. Remember, you will have to work backwards in terms of how the program was designed. The first step is to identify learning activities that you engaged during the CCP year in question. One way to do this is to use your agenda to remind you of some of the learning activities you've completed. Remember that learning activities are defined broadly in the CCP. They could include reading or online research, experiential learning, supervision or consultation, as well as courses or workshops. If you are unsure of what counts as a learning activity, see page 17 of the CCP Instruction Guide. The second step is to complete the professional development plan. You will have to think about what goals might have been associated with the learning activities that you've completed. The third step is to complete your self-assessment tool. What needs or opportunities could be associated with the learning goals identified? The fourth step is to pull together a folder of evidence of the learning activities that you engaged in. Try not to be thrown off by the word evidence. Your folder should be an indication or reminder of what you did. This could be something like a certificate of completion for a workshop, a list of articles read or websites visited, or a list of meetings attended. Step 5 is to complete and send in your declaration. So let's discuss each of these steps in a bit more detail. The first step to going back to complete your CCP when you've fallen behind is to identify any learning activities that you completed during the CCP year in question. Remember that learning activities are defined broadly and are not limited to the ones on the screen. You can find more examples of learning activities on page 17 of the CCP Instructions Guide. As you'll see, learning activities include a wide range of activities, from continuing education, to research, to applied learning, to teaching. If you weren't practicing during the CCP year in question, think about any activities that you did to keep current with social work or social service work practice. This could include reviewing college materials, reading or learning online, or consulting formally or informally with those in the field. Take a moment now to list any learning activities you completed in the previous year. You can pause this webcast while you do so. Remember to give yourself credit for what you've done. Step 2 is completing the professional development plan. After identifying the learning activities you've completed in the previous year, try to identify what your goals would have been associated with those activities. Once you've formulated a goal that relates to the learning activity that you engaged in, think about which of the 8 principles in the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice Handbook it might fall under. For example, if one of your learning activities was reading on articles on group work, then perhaps your learning goal might have been to gain group work skills. This goal might fit well under Principle 2, Competence and Integrity. If you read Principle 2 in the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice Handbook, you'll see that anything that relates to expanding your knowledge base often fits well under this principle. Remember that your learning activities should be relevant to your goal and should have a connection to your practice. In order to link your learning activities to a goal, you might find it helpful to ask the following questions. What goals might be associated with the learning activities that I have identified. What did I want to accomplish when I engaged in those learning activities? Once you've identified the goals associated with your learning activities, think about which principle or principles and the standards of practice relate to them. This slide shows how you can go back to complete your professional development plan in hindsight. Once you've identified your learning activities and associated them with a goal, you can enter the information in your professional development plan. Here's how it may look. In this example, the member noted that they had read articles on group work and received ongoing supervision throughout the group. Their identified goal was to gain group work skills. This goal was related to Principle 2, competence and integrity. In order to complete the professional development plan, you will also need to fill out the evidence of accomplishment column. The question associated with this column would be, how will you know that you've accomplished your goal? In this example, the member's evidence of accomplishment was that they would have offered a group for single mothers and evaluated it. They could have also noted something like, knowledge of group interventions increased. Once you've completed your professional development plan documents, it's time to move on to Step 3, completing your self-assessment tool for the previous year. In this case, you can ask yourself what needs or opportunities you had in the previous year. What learning needs did you have that led to your choice of learning goals and learning activities? Under which principle would these learning needs or opportunities fall? The questions in the self-assessment tool help guide you to reflect on your strengths and areas for further learning in relation to each principle in the standards of practice. You will also be required to review each principle in its entirety in the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice Handbook. Once you've done this, you can transfer your goals from the professional development plan to the self-assessment tool. It's important to remember that you don't need to have a goal for every principle. The fourth step in completing your CCP from the previous year is to pull together a folder of evidence. In addition to being a professional obligation, your CCP is a reflection of your ongoing professional development, your goals, and your accomplishments. As part of the program, you are required to keep evidence of having completed your goals, usually in a separate folder that is kept with your CCP documents. Many members find that keeping an electronic folder of evidence gives them greater flexibility, but you can keep a paper folder if you prefer. By keeping a folder of evidence of your professional achievements as part of your CCP, you will be able to update your professional information easily and keep track of your learning and development. All your evidence will be in one place. Reflecting on the evidence you gather can also help you in evaluating your strengths and setting goals for your CCP in the following year. You also may want to consider including a narrative about your learning experiences in your folder. The fifth and final step to complete your CCP from the previous year is to complete and send in your declaration of participation. Normally, the declaration is part of the renewal process, Section 4 of the Annual Renewal of Registration Form. If you had completed the CCP as required and answered yes to all 3 questions about the CCP, you wouldn't have heard from us. However, because you answered no to 1 or more questions in your declaration or left 1 or more questions blank, you received follow-up correspondence from the college. A declaration of participation in the CCP was sent with this correspondence. If you did not receive the declaration or have misplaced it, please contact the Professional Practice Department at the college. Be sure to complete, sign, and send in the declaration by the deadline set out in the letter. You can mail the declaration or send in a faxed or scanned copy. We've almost reached the end of this webcast on going back to complete your CCP from the previous year. If you still have questions, be sure to go to the CCP pages on the college website, which contains lots of helpful information about the CCP, including 2 CCP webcasts that go into detail on how to complete your CCP once you've caught up. You can also find articles on specific aspects of the CCP. All your CCP documents, the CCP Instruction Guide and the Self-Assessment Tool and Professional Development Plan Documents booklet are available online for you to download and save to your computer and on your member resource USB. We encourage you to visit the website regularly. Before we wrap up, I'd like to share some tips for staying on track with your CCP once you've caught up. There are lots of different ways to ensure that you complete your CCP in a timely manner, track your learning efficiently, and get the most out of the program. We strongly advise members to complete their self-assessment tool and professional development plan documents early in the year, so that they can periodically go back to update their documents as they complete their goals throughout the year. Some members set aside 15 minutes at the end of every week to update their CCP and to reflect on their progress towards their goals. Even doing this monthly can help to ensure that you don't lose track of important learning. Other members complete the self-assessment tool and professional development plan in pairs or groups with peers and or colleagues, and then meet regularly either to discuss ongoing learning or to work together on the learning activities that they have identified. Remember, you do not submit your CCP materials, but you must keep your documents for 7 years. You must also keep evidence of your learning activities. Here are some tips to take away to ensure you get the most out of your CCP. Try using the worksheet. The CCP worksheet is optional, but it can be a valuable springboard for the remainder of the program. Do it with a colleague or a group. Even though you were responsible for your own CCP, feedback from others, peers, colleagues, your supervisor or manager can be an effective way to overcome any blind spots with respect to your practice and your self-assessment. Make a date with yourself. Reserve a specific time to update and add to your CCP on a weekly or monthly basis. Give yourself credit. Remember to track your CCP regularly. You may want to try transferring items from your agenda to your CCP at the end of every week. And finally, use technology. Download a copy of the CCP documents from the website or your member resource USB and create an electronic folder for your evidence of your learning activities. This makes documenting and tracking your learning experiences easy and efficient. I hope that this webcast has helped you understand what you need to do to go back to complete your CCP from the previous year. If you have any further questions, please visit the CCP pages on the college website or contact the Professional Practice Department.